find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
Hello, and welcome to Ready for Love Radio. This is your host and love coach, Nikki Lee. You know, I think sometimes we may get to the point where we get used to our lives, we get used to how things are going. You know, we all have our own perspective about our lives and how things are going. And sometimes we may not realize that we could improve our situation, improve our lives, and, you know, even improve our perspective on our lives, our jobs, our families, pretty much everything. And I think my guest today is going to be able to help us do that. What do you think, Dave? You think that's something we could help the listeners with today?
Well, I would hope so, because if I don't want to say that's what my life's been about, but that's where I've landed. And I think you hit on it at the beginning. It's really changing the perspective, and one of the big changes is when you go from the victim, which is something you talked about, like, oh my God, you know, my life's a mess, I'm a mess, I'm no damn good, to go into a place where you at least begin to realize I can change that, and I can change that by changing my perspectives and how I look at life.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we don't realize it is our perspective, you know, and sometimes if you just kind of reframe how you think about things, or just kind of, it doesn't take a big change sometimes. Sometimes it's just a little change in how we think of things and look at things makes a world of difference. And I think we're going to help them with that. So I'd like to let y'all know this is Dave Gold, and he brings the full power and wisdom of 45 years as a businessman, a trial lawyer, an executive consultant, a spiritual mentor, to liberate world-changing executives and entrepreneurs from the shackles of self-doubt and self-disqualification. Now, if world-changing, if executives and entrepreneurs have self-doubt and disqualification mentalities, you know, other people probably do too, don't you think?
I would say part of why they're seeming success is because they've been driven by this self-doubt and the self-negation. And I need to change that intro, because I'm working with a lot more than those people right now. But you know, it's funny. And just to answer, yes, everyone does. And because the success that they hoped would free them from self-doubt and from their sense of not being good enough and not being the person they want to be and doing things wrong, they're hoping that the validation of success and the fruits of success will take that away from them. It'll no longer, and it doesn't. It doesn't, because it doesn't get, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, because, well, you know, it's funny. It's kind of like, you know, okay, like everyday people, you know, and you know, 97% of the population kind of has this mistaken idea that, you know, the people who have, quote unquote, you know, succeeded or have huge bank accounts, have like this glorified lifestyle and don't have doubts and don't have all these problems. They've got the same problems all of us do. They just have bigger bank accounts, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know,
yes.
You know, so it's like if these people have self-doubts and this kind of thing, it makes sense everybody else does too. You know, so if they need help with that, then it makes sense that everybody else does too. So what do we all do to get rid of those? And what do we need to do to fix this problem? So I think this is something that everybody kind of needs, most everybody needs help with. What do you think?
No, and believe me, I just turned 70. I am more free of self-doubt and self-loathing and wishing I was somebody other than I am than I've ever been. And at the same time, it's infinite. our capacity to be free is just infinite. So first of all, going back to what you were saying, so many people think they're going to success their way out of suffering. That's what their MO is. I'm going to success my way out of suffering. And it doesn't work. And I can tell it doesn't work. And I've been very successful. I mean, I've made millions. I've lost millions. I've worked with all kinds of people. And like you say, the problems are all the same. And often what it is they're actually more down on themselves because their success hasn't brought them the peace of mind that they thought that it might.
Right.
So if you think you're going to...
Well, they work so hard to get that success, and it's like, okay, I got here, now what? Because it doesn't bring them what they thought it would have. Imagine working that hard and you get there, and it's like, that would have to be discouraging, and you're like, okay, what did I do wrong?
You see all the things that you see with people. Yeah, go ahead.
I love the quote on your website that says, "Find success that feeds your soul, not kills it." I love that.
Yeah, I like it too. I wrote it even if I wrote it myself, I still think it's a great line because there is a success that comes with that, but the success comes from a point of fullness and not from a point of lack. And I think that's one of the major dichotomies or differences you can take. Because if you're trying to fill a hole, if you're starting from a point that I'm no good and I need this to be whole, and until I have this, I'm not gonna be whole, then it's never going to fill, because you end up where you start. You end up where you started. So if I'm starting from lack, if I'm starting from self-doubt, if I'm starting from all these other places, then nothing's going to fill that up. So and the other kind of the flip side of people that are trying to success their way out of suffering is you can't suffer your way to success either. So, and this is the mistake that so many people make, is they think, okay, I'm going to pay my dues. The ends will justify the means. I will sacrifice my family life. I'll sacrifice my health. I'll sacrifice my values and my morals and my free time and my ability to enjoy life, because I want to be able to, have a payoff. And it doesn't work. Because you end up where you started. If you start from suffering, you're going to end from suffering. So the first thing that I would suggest to people is that, one, just recognize that nothing more needs to happen for you to call it happiness, peace of mind, comfort in your own skin. We all think there's certain conditions that need to happen before that happens. All of us. I mean, there's no crime in this. We all feel this way. Oh, when I get rid of this habit. Oh, when I get this woman, or I get this spouse. Or when I get this and I get that. And it's always pushing it away. You never get it. That will not do it, because, again, you're coming from a position of lack. So what does it mean for us to start from a position of fullness? What does it mean to start from a position? It doesn't mean your life's perfect. It doesn't mean there's things that couldn't improve. It doesn't mean you could have another zero on your bank account, or your kids could, not drive you as nuts, or whatever it is that you want, to think need to happen. But what does it mean for us to be able to sit with where we are, with who we are, and be comfortable in our own skin? Now, that seems impossible. But I'm telling you, it's never more possible than it is in this moment.
Right.
And that's radical. That takes time out of the picture. That takes, deserving out of the picture. That takes achievement out of the picture. But I've just realized, I've recognized, and, in my journey, we can talk about it later, but through my journey, I realized, man, my life's getting better and better and better. But it's good, and it's just getting better. It's good, and it's getting better. And nothing more needs to happen. No part of me has to be gotten rid of. Nothing, there's no impediment. Any impediment that you're putting between you and happiness is going to make sure you never get it.
Interesting. What I was just thinking about? If you have a mentality that I'll be happy when this happens, I'll be happy when that happens, I'll be happy when I get this, I'll be happy when I get that. That's basically, and I've never heard this before, somebody may have said it before, but that's basically conditional happiness. You're making your happiness conditional on something else. That's right. And you're hoping that it's funny, I had an experience, I mentioned I had many, many years in spiritual pursuits, and I ended up moving on to a farm when I was practicing law with a Zen teacher.
And I went off by myself, and I sat alone in a tent. And I sat in that tent, and there was nothing to do. There was no, and I was deprived of all the things that I think I needed to do to make me happy. And I realized that until I could be happy by myself in that tent with no distractions, nothing else that I needed to do to make me happy, that I would be spending my whole life outside of myself, hoping that I would do something that would bring me internal happiness. And I would be, so really I'm like 3 steps away from myself. I'm rearranging the furniture outside, hoping it makes me feel good on the inside.
Right.
And I'm very fortunate. It doesn't mean, I've been a successful attorney. I've been a successful businessman. I've done a lot of successful things that have brought me to action. But they didn't. They just added to an innate sense of fullness. It didn't change. It didn't fundamentally change who I was or my experience of life.
That's it. Well, amazing how things change when you can just be happy with yourself. You don't need a distraction. You don't need like video games or your phone or your tablet or 15 other people around you to keep you entertained, but you can just be happy with yourself.
And this seems impossible. It doesn't mean, look, I'm a restless guy. I'm a high energy guy. Okay.
Right,
so
right.
It doesn't mean that I don't need, that you lock me in a room for a while, I'll start to go nuts. That's okay. So there's a difference between being restless. There's a difference between enjoying things. There's a different, that's just part of being human.
Right.
But the idea that somehow I'm not good company for myself.
Right.
And if you think about it, that's what we think. We think I am not fit company for myself.
Right.
And as long as you're that way, and you think what it's like being with someone that you don't want to be with, how unpleasant that is, imagine if that's you.
Yes.
If you're the person that, you're the roommate with, that doesn't pick up his underwear, right? Whatever it is, you're that person, and that's what we live with. And
right.
And it just doesn't have to be that way.
That's it. Well, it's when you feel like you're the odd couple and you're both of them, so yeah.
Well said.
For some reason, they just popped in my head. That's terrible.
So then all, I can anticipate all the things that people are thinking. Oh yeah, but they don't know, they don't know that I did this, or they don't see that I have yet to do that, or they don't know that I have this problem or that problem. And everybody thinks they're a special case. Right. Why they can't be comfortable in their own skin. And if everybody feels that it's wrong, if everybody thinks that it's wrong, because we're all the exception. We all think we're the exception. And so it's interesting to start thinking, what is it that I'm using to disqualify myself? What is it that I'm pointing to? When the love of my dreams, beyond my dreams, descended in my life 8 years ago, I couldn't accept it because I couldn't believe this beautiful woman of integrity and depth and everything that I valued, 15 years younger than me, could look at who I was and love me. And I kept looking for the loophole. What's the matter with her? Is she insane? Is she blind? Right? And so I had to come to grips with the fact that my image of myself didn't match up with what was actually happening in my life.
Yeah.
And that was traumatic. I had to make a choice between hanging on to my suffering and hanging on to my sense that my life was a tragedy and accepting the great good fortune that comes with us. And I can guarantee you that every one of our listeners has faced that same situation. And we're scared to death of success. We're scared to death of love. We're scared to death of all these things. And part of the reason is because we feel we don't deserve it, because there's always something we can point to ourselves that proves in air quotes, proves we're imperfect. And son of a gun, we're human. We came here to be human. We didn't come here to be gods. We came here to be human. So naturally, I used to kid. I leave the toilet seat up. Okay, so shoot me. It's not like until I learn to put the toilet seat down, I'll never have love. I tell you, my biggest stumbling block, and it took me the longest time to figure this out, and it actually happened, and I use this a lot because I want people to get this through their heads, and it happened in my coaching training, and the biggest
this was like a bolt of lightning for me. The biggest aha moment I had was I was studying through, the part of my training was called Coaching the Love Coach, okay? And the biggest moment, it jumped off the page at me, and it was like it hit me upside the head, and it said that not to judge my clients, okay? Because you know how important that is when you're working with a client. You can't judge your clients. No matter what they tell you, you can't judge them, right? And it finally, it hit me. I can't judge my clients, so I can't judge me. I need to give myself the same benefit and not judge myself.
That is so brilliant. And in fact, we can only be as judgment-free with others as we are with ourselves.
Exactly.
It's simple. It's the same. I do a parenting podcast, and it's like we can't love our children more than we love ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't ask our children to be freer than we are ourselves. But that was so profound, what you realized, I'm not judgmental. But constantly we're saying, oh, look how I screwed this up. Look how I screwed that. Oh, I'm no damn good.
Yeah.
So and what you do, and it's why these people that are listening to you, and those that have and will listen to you and have the benefit of your presence, they're so lucky, because that way you can create a space of love for them.
Yeah. A
space of love and acceptance where they can start loving and accepting themselves. And that's the greatest gift that real coaches like you, and I would put myself in that category, that we give to people. And it doesn't mean that we're not discerning. If I have there's things about the people, we know them. You and I, we know human nature. But we're so loving of our own nature that we can love their nature too, no matter how it shows up.
Right.
At the same time, to bring out the best version of themselves, or the version of themselves that they most want to be and experience.
Well, that doesn't mean that we don't give advice and say, this is something that is unhealthy and you need to change, but that's not judgmental. This is there are things that we do that are healthy and things that are unhealthy, and they need to change, And, you could make a decision which way you're going to go with this, but this is advice, this is perspective, and this would be a better course of action, that kind of thing. But yeah, that was the biggest, most beneficial day of all of my training. When I said, I've got to stop being judgmental of myself. And I tell you what, with my upbringing, that was hard. Oh my goodness, that was hard. So.
My God. Yeah, you were raised by perfectionists, and you can never be good enough for.
Well, very demanding, very religious, very uptight perfectionist. So.
Very judgmental.
Oh yeah. Still are. So.
Right. And you realize in a way, that's the gift they've given to you, because you decided you were not going to pass that lineage on to anybody else.
Yeah. Yep. And then
I think it's really important. Yeah, and the thing, and also what it does is people can't come to you and say, you don't understand how hard I had it. You don't know what kind of perfectionist my dad was, or, what kind of doormat my mother, whatever the heck it is, because yes, you do. You've done it. And when you do it, you can speak from it. And it's interesting. I was with a client, Saturday, and just a beautiful human being, and a great life and a great person, great husband, great kids, great everything, and really enjoys her life. Except she's struggling with the demands of having a perfectionist father. And I said, so we internalize that voice, right? We have the voice that we had from them saying, you're no damn good, and then we just take it on ourselves because we think that's going to be our love language. If we just keep beating ourselves up the way our parents beat us up, that's love. It's madness, but it's what we all do. And so you have that, and I said, do you think you still need to be hard on yourself? And first she said, yes. And I said, well, let's go through all the things you think you would be or would happen to you if you weren't hard on yourself. We went through every one of them. There was nothing. She didn't have to worry that she was going to be lazy, she was going to be unfaithful, she was going to be a bad mother, a bad employee, a bad friend. When she really went through all the reasons that she thought she needed to have this harsh voice in her head, she realized she didn't need it.
Right.
And this is true for all of us. We're all afraid that we're going to just become if I may, become a puddle of piss if we stop beating ourselves up, if we stop being hard on ourselves, if we stop judging ourselves. And we get to a point, and I know, I could speak from us, sure, where I just know I don't want to am I going to make mistakes? Yeah, am I going to hurt? Whatever. People might call mistakes, sure. But I know my heart's good. I know I want what's best for people. And so I don't need to have this voice constantly, oh my God, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, you did this. Why didn't you, whatever. Because I just know I'm going to act out of love. And the good will come out of that. And if it's not the perfect form that my perfectionist voice thinks I should have, that's my perfectionist voice's problem. That's not my problem.
That's right. Yeah, it's
So what, Nikki? Let me ask you. What do you think is the most liberating? What's the most liberating advice or perspective or whatever that you can give people who find themselves just really drowning in judgment and self-doubt and self-negation?
To turn off that voice in their head that's judging them and to block out others that are judging them. Like I said, it did wonders for me.
And I think that's really the last thing you said about where is whose voices are you letting in your head?
Yes.
I mean, you can't necessarily shut the voice. I still have voices in my head, second guessing and criticizing. But you know what? That's like a mosquito.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll even catch it, and I'll find myself, okay, so I spent 3 minutes following that voice as to why I'm no damn good. So what?
Right.
I know it's not true. So one, it's like you don't have to wait till those voices stop in your head. If you do, you'll probably wait forever because they're so deeply ingrained. Some of them are generational. Some of them are like, hey, this is generations of people who felt this way that have been passed down to me. But the other is just being, I'm so selective about the people that I let into my life. And and that's I don't have to be because I have so many people in my life and they come from love. But when I still needed to, now the people that don't want to do me good or do world good, they generally don't stick around, or they're not attracted. And the ones that are, they come. But for a while, when I need to be more discerning, I just don't want people in my world that are negative.
Yeah.
And I found that I don't need them. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and the thing is, I went through a major health crisis, and it was a very good screening opportunity to find out who is going to be there for me and who is actually there to support me and who's not. I mean, when you go through a situation, and I mean, my father was standing there beside me when the doctor said, if you don't have this surgery, you'll be dead by tomorrow morning. And he went home and went to bed. I mean, that told me all I need to know.
Yeah, that's got to leave a mark. That leaves a mark, as we say. That's going to leave a mark.
It does. And, so, I mean, the people that showed up for me and the people that did not show up for me, and I've been through 2 more surgeries just like that. Actually more extreme than that one was. So, I mean, I now know very clearly what people I can count on and what people I cannot, and which ones that will step up when there's an emergency and there's a crisis. And, well, and I went through cancer also. I mean, all of this in the last, 7 years. And so, I mean, I have definitely screened the people that are around me, and I have eliminated a number of people, and it's to the point where I know whose opinion matters to me, whose does not, and when I want opinions and I want feedback, I know who I'm going to go to, so I don't wish those trials on anyone, even people I dislike, because I know what they were to go through. There much smaller situations that can go on in your life that can give you the opportunity to screen people and to see who you can count on and who you can't, who's going to support you, who's going to have your back when you need them, and to be able to know who you can count on, you know, who really does care for you and will be there, and who, when they come to you and say, hey, you might want to think about something, or you might want to consider another perspective or whatever, you know who to listen to, and or who to at least consider what they have to say. You know, I'm not saying you have to follow it, but you know, everybody comes at a situation from a different perspective, a different life experience. At least, you know, you might want to at least listen to what they have to say, and then, you know, you use your own experience and your own, you know, whatever, and see if it is useful information.
And I think there's a kind of a split that I've seen, or a dichotomy that's working very well for me and has. And I realized that, you know, it actually is funny. It came when Julie parachuted into my life 8 years ago. And I was very circumspect about the people that I was told. I just didn't want. I mean, one, because I tend to be exaggerating and, you know, impressionable, and I don't want people to think, oh well, he's just, you know, this is his latest love affair. And so I was really, really careful. And my broker, who I started my law practice at the same time he started his brokerage practice, and then it was like 40 years later we'd been together. He was a spiritual brother from bygone days. And I, you know, finally he asked me what was going on, and I thought, well, I could either lie or just tell him. I told him, I said, I found the woman of my dreams, and he said, it won't last. And that man's out of my life. Not because I'm punishing him. I'm not punishing him. I just don't want that energy into my life.
Right.
And when you start, and so now I ask myself, am I coming from fear? Am I coming from love? I look at the people. It doesn't mean, you know, if you show any fear, I don't want you in my life. It means if that's your prevailing energy, and if you want me to join you in your fearfulness, because, you know, as they say, misery loves company, and you want me to validate that life's a terrible place, the world's a terrible place, and life's a terrible experience, and you can't catch a break, which is what most people want from their relationships.
Right.
I'm not going to play. I'm not going to be a part of it. And, you know, there's one other thing I was just thinking when we were talking, that, you know, you have situations like you're, you know, and you had the courage to pick a hard life so you could love deeply. And that's the true heroine's journey that you've been on. And it doesn't always have to be heroic, because all kinds of people are just going to stumble into your life, and you're going to stumble into their life. Mm-hmm. And then what's that, you know, and then what effect are you going to have on the other? You can get such phenomenal wisdom off of the weirdest people.
Right.
You know,
you can.
They don't know. And, you know, I had something happen yesterday. I haven't told anybody about it. I'm going to have to write something about it. But my wife was taking her car in last night. We had to drop it off so it could be taken first thing in the morning, so she could take the car and get off on some business stuff. And she's parked in front of the auto place, and she's filling out one of the forms so she come in the lockbox. And it's sketchy. I mean, we're looking over. It's right next to Salvation Army. I mean, a Goodwill place, and there's a couple of guys stealing clothes out of the bin, and these people wandering around. And sitting in front of the car place is a guy who's obviously homeless. He's got a bicycle and, you know, backpack and blah, 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 blah. And I just went over and started talking to him. And he was homeless. He'd just gotten out of prison. You know, he did so many years for this and so many years for that. But I spoke with him. I just treated him with such respect. And I said, you don't have a bad vibe. I'm not scared of you. And the more he talked, he said, I have money in my pocket. I'm not a typical homeless guy. He reached in his pocket. He pulled out a bunch of ones. And, you know, where do you sleep? Oh, I stay here on the bench till 3:30, and then there's someone who lets me. They have a Mexican restaurant. I can sleep in, you know, under the patio there. And we just talked. You know, it was nothing. I was just waiting for my wife to finish filling out the damn forms. But when I left, you know, he told me that, he says, I write songs sometimes too. I write songs. And as I drove off, he was singing. He was singing one of the songs. And it was just like, wow, what a beautiful interlude.
Yeah.
And I could have, and this is again how you look at life. I could have looked at life like, God, my wife's parking her car. There's a homeless guy. There's all these sketchy people here, and no, I wasn't trying to do anything. I wasn't trying to get anything. I didn't care. I didn't even tell my wife about it. I mean, I told her a little bit about it, but I didn't brag about it. It was just, hey, there's another human being in my life, and I'm in his life for 2 minutes, and I don't have to. It's not like I got to have a profound effect on everyone, but I just wanted to meet him with love instead of meeting him. And boy, your life gets so magical when that happens, and you know that, Nikki. Everything changes.
Yeah, well, there's some people that I've just kind of run across on Facebook, and I've just kind of said hi to them because they've popped up or they've commented on something I've posted or a friend has posted, and we've become good friends, and I've met some of them in person, some of them I haven't, and like I said, it's just because like maybe we commented on the same thread or something, and we hit it off, or we ended up on the same projects for something, and it just because of something that was said or whatever that you just kind of got curious and you're like, hey, and it I don't know, it just, and that's like what you're saying, you could just kind of have a fear of other people or a person that maybe is different from you, or just prejudging people or whatever, and you miss out on so much, but I don't know, it just works to not live that way. You got to be cautious, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean, no, there's no question about it. I would have felt very different if Julie would have been there by herself.
Right.
I wouldn't have wanted her to be open to every homeless person sitting around.
Right. Right.
So there's a certain amount of discernment, but the most critical factor that I found that it keeps proving itself and reproving itself in every aspect of my life. My life continues to get better. And better, I don't want to say like it wasn't bad. I mean, it's just, I can say it just gets better. It gets more enjoyable.
Yes.
It gets more fulfilled. It gets more exciting and more unexpected and more magical.
Yeah.
It's how much you trust life. And if you don't trust life, if you don't trust, you live in fear. And if you trust, you're able to live in love. And go ahead.
Well, I tell you something that I have found that makes life more pleasurable. And it's super, super simple, and every single person can do it. Now, during the whole COVID thing, when we had to wear a mask, it was a little difficult, but otherwise we can do it, is when you're out and you're doing things, just smile at people that you come across.
Mm-hmm.
And that will immediately, other people that have the same mentality will at least smile back, and they might say hello. And even if not, you've at least brightened the other person's day. And you've shifted your own perspective on your own as well. You can only keep a smile on your face legitimately for so long. And there is something very, very transformative that happens with just bringing that positive part of yourself. And, people are listening, and I'm sure they think, again, they don't have my problems. They don't know when I'm up. It's easy for them to say because da-da-da-da-da. And as I said, there's never a shortage of reasons to disqualify yourself. But what I found is, and I've dealt with some really, not since I've been doing, mentoring kind of exclusively, but back when I was practicing law and in business and just in life, I met some people that were really, didn't have many redeeming qualities. But for the most part, almost everybody loves something. Yeah.
Almost everybody loves someone. And if you love someone, you have the capacity to love. You know what it feels like to love. You know the effect that love has on how you look at things and what you're able to do, and the different perspective you have towards that which you love and that which you don't have that, don't experience that love. So one area that I just encourage people is just to zero in on just where does the love live in your body? What does it feel like? Energetically, what is it like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And then you can start looking into yourself when you're acting from love and when you're acting from fear.
Right.
And it was interesting because it was a client we were talking, and one, she's a pleaser. You know, she wants to make everybody happy, and because she doesn't, never feels she's going to be loved enough, whatever the reasons are. And also, she generally likes to make people happy.
Yeah.
So it's the way she's like, well, what do? I don't want to just run around like a trained dog, puppy dog all the time and perform for people to make them smile. And at the same time, I really take great joy out of it. And I say, okay, close your eyes. What does it feel like when you're performing like a trained SEAL and you're running around trying to get approval? And then, okay, it feels like this in this part of my body. And what does it feel like when you gave this gift to your husband, this unexpected gift? And you can start really just, rather than getting stuck in our heads all the time and trying to sort this out, you can literally feel in your body and how you feel it in your body in terms of when you're coming from fear and when you're coming from love.
Right.
And that is, and for me, it's second nature for so much of what I do right now. It doesn't feel right, and I don't do it.
That's it. Well, I mean, and I know when I was going through cancer treatment and I was going through the other stuff in the hospital, there were days it was extremely difficult, but I would make an effort to smile when I went in because it would help my mentality and help my attitude. And when you're sick and you're trying to deal with stuff, your attitude really does help. I mean, obviously that's not all of it, but it does help. And the thing is, it was helping the other people there too, and I knew it was. Yeah. And the thing is, we could help each other, and I knew we could, And I needed to do everything I could to help myself. So I knew, okay, if I do this, and I'm with the other people, and it's going to help me and it's going to help them, that's good, So it was just, like I said, it was as much for me as it was for anybody.
Yeah,
but
it was.
Like I said,
there's a healing. But I think what you said is so critical because, and I'm just thinking of, in fact, I'm looking at my backyard. I'm looking at where I was having this conversation. I remember I went out in the neighborhood and without Wi-Fi, people are out of work or dead, just in terms of the businesses and everything else. And I was trying to get a time when they could fixing it, and I got run around, and they would set a time to get someone to come. Oh, they were going to send someone out to fix the Wi-Fi. And I kept getting run around, and finally I was able to track someone down and who had a date, and he said, we can't get out there till next Tuesday. And I just said, boy, you're like the doctor to everybody that got cancer. I said, this got to be a terrible job for you, because by the time people get to you, all you have is bad news. Yeah. And that person was so appreciative, and instead of someone yelling at them, someone just said, oh, man, it's got to be hard. And it didn't cost me anything. And just like you in the hospital, they're dealing with cranky, sick people all the time. And the fact that you can say, man, it's got to be hell dealing with cranky, sick people all the time. And it's a shift. You say that, you think, oh, it's not like you do a good deed and God rewards you. Maybe not. I don't know. It's not the point. The point is, it's just that the love that I feel in that moment for that human being is so self-healing.
Right.
It's so therapeutic, and it attracts so many different things. And, one thing I'll say, I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, is that look, I've been a trial lawyer. I'm a business person. I help people build companies. I got to make decisions. I'm not living in some ivory tower.
Right.
What I'm saying, I'm building a business myself. I got to make rational, informed decisions every day about everything. So the fact that you carry a position of love and trust and expectation of good and seeing opportunity everywhere doesn't mean that people are going to take advantage of you and you're going to be stupid. It just means that things are going to be able to land in a way, and you're going to be able to make decisions out of love and out of brilliance. You have your love and you have your brilliance all at the same time. So I just want people to know, if you're thinking what I'm saying is not realistic, I can say it's realistic because it works for me and it works for others, and it's realistic because I'm able to live a functional life in the real world with all the things that come with real world stuff. And that's why it's like you, Nick. We model it for people just by being ourselves.
Right. Exactly. Well, and honestly, think about it. If you're out in public, or if you're in a room full of people, which people, if you're in a room full of, say you're in a room of 10 people, okay, and 8 of them look grumpy and 10 of them are smiling and look happy, which ones are you more likely to approach?
Mm-hmm. And which ones do you want to do business with?
Exactly. You know,
there's a very practical part of this too.
It's human nature to gravitate toward the ones that look happy. It's just, that's how we are. Unless you're a person that's always negative and down and grumpy, and then you're probably going to gravitate toward the ones that are just like you. Now, the warning, let me put a warning out there. If you're a grumpy, grouchy person, other grumpy, grouchy people are going to gravitate toward you, which means you're probably going to be surrounded by grumpy, grouchy people. So if you want to turn that around, the best way to do that is to smile and be happier. What do you think? Sound like a plan?
It's just very natural, and you will attract the right people in your life. You'll avoid the people that don't belong in your life, and you're just going to get surprises in all kinds of different ways. And those surprises don't have to be, they're not always gift wrapped.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come in ways that are very, I mean, I have a very big challenge, a large parenting challenge right now that I'm dealing with that would have brought me to my knees years ago. And I don't want it, but it's here, and I see the blessing in it. I see that my capacity to surrender, this is just deepen my capacity for surrender in a way, and that's just doing me helping, doing in so many ways. So the fact that things in our life aren't going to, we use those as disqualifications. Oh, hey, Dave and Nikki said that I wouldn't have, my kid wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have lost money on the stock market, or I wouldn't have, gotten rear-ended or whatever. No, that's life. Whatever you're doing to disqualify yourself, is nonsense. You're just tormenting yourself. And so I just want people to know there's a different way, and as you do, and it really begins with when we stop disqualifying ourselves, and we just start to see who we are and accept our humanity as we are, bring as much love as we can to the table in every given moment, and we celebrate. And my life is in the midst of everything else. So I really appreciate you giving me this chance to talk, Nikki, and get a chance to know you and meet a fellow lover of life and lover of people. So thank you for all of this.
Hey, you had an interesting, in your notes that I was looking over, you used a word that I hadn't heard before. This is kind of interesting, and I think this fits in with our conversation we've been having. It was called self-negation. I'd never heard that before. Do you want to tell us what that is? This is something we don't want to do. That's why I want to talk about this.
Yeah, and it's the term that I heard someone else. I can't, I have to footnote it. But self-negation is when you find reasons to cancel yourself out. You find reasons to disqualify yourself. You find reasons to think you're not doing well. To basically cancel. I would say it's more like a cancel. I don't want to say cancel in the sense, being cancel in that kind of social media way. But I mean cancel like deleting yourself, negating yourself, just taking the charge out of the life that the energy and the charge that you're bringing by just saying, no, I'm no good. And it's a way of taking yourself out of the picture, taking yourself out of life by qualifying yourself or defining yourself as someone who is negative rather than having a negative rather than a positive effect. And we do it to ourselves.
I was thinking too. Let me run something past you and tell me if this sounds like it too.
Okay.
Like when you have friends or relatives or whatever, and you have something that's important to you, and they kind of belittle it, Like when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a writer, and my family's like, "Oh no, you can't do that. No, that's not something you should do." And so I just kind of said, "Okay, well, never mind. That's not something to do." And so I just completely ignored it for years and years and years, and just decided I couldn't do it. So I was being self-negating about that, and just put that desire completely out of my mind. Right.
And the important point is when people negate us, and then we start doing it to ourselves. Right.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we don't want to hang around with those people, but we internalize that negation, because generally that's been the language of love that we have from often our parents. And my parents are phenomenal people. I love them dearly, and my love for them has only increased since they've transitioned. And at the same time, I know that our love languages are screwed up. So if you have a parent that is always riding you and trying to get you to be better, then we start doing it ourselves, because when our parent was taking that attitude with us, we experienced love. That was our connection.
Right.
And so then we do it with ourselves. And that's the crime. But the good news is then we can do it ourselves. We don't have to wait for someone else to pat us on the head. We don't need the accolades. We don't need the extra 3 or 4 zeros in our bank accounts before we stop negating ourselves. And we don't need evidence. We'll get evidence as we stop negating ourselves. More positive things will happen, and we'll see clearer the beauty that we are. But the real power is we can. And I mean, it's so different. And I felt so lucky. I was talking to a client, and the client said, I don't know what it would look like for me not to negate I don't know what it'd even look like, because I don't have any models. I said, well, it sounds immodest, but you got one standing in front of you.
Right.
And so that's what we can do.
Well, that kind of thing becomes our normal, so we don't. That I had very much that kind of thing as my normal, deciding that the things that I thought I wanted were things that, no, you can't do that, or no, you shouldn't do that, or no, that's wrong, or no, that's not okay, and so all of these things that I felt were important to me, I was being told were not okay. That's not something that you should do, and so it took the longest time for me to get all that out of my head, that it is okay to do this,
Yeah.
So, it takes time for all that. I actually just finished ghostwriting and collaborating on a book with somebody called Am I Normal If? And we talk about that kind of thing a lot in that book, that, a lot of the stuff that we learned and that got ingrained in us when we were growing up, those were our parents' thoughts and values and their normal. But as we grow up, it gets to the point where that's not our normal and what serves us. And how do we make that leap from their normal to our normal, and not necessarily what's normal, but what's natural for us, and helps us to learn how to get from point A to point B. So,
well, that's another podcast episode, but it's definitely on the right track. And there's ways that I honor my parents, really honor them in terms of the values that they've instilled upon me, and even some of their craziness and stuff. At the same time, Nikki, I love being myself. I love being who I am.
We can do that, So it's there is a way to do both and still be true to ourselves and be authentic, our authentic selves. Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, as someone that's been in business and works with a lot of business people, and just starting another business, which is apparently doing quite well right now, is our authenticity and our individuality and our uniqueness, which we think we have to gloss over and hide because people think we're nuts. That's our superpower. That's actually what our superpower is. And that's what, again, and that's another podcast as well. So I know we're coming up on the end of the hour here. I really want to thank you so much, Nikki, for, you and I had to persevere to make a time work for both of us with our schedules, but I'm glad we were able to do that. And I would just tell everyone that's listening again that you've got a real gem there with Nikki. She's just such a resource, and she is, I don't say paid dearly, but she has earned her wisdom that she's sharing with you. So perhaps you don't have to suffer the way she has. And I would encourage you that if you're looking for support, looking for perspective, and looking for a friend in life, that she's a good one to have. So, and Nikki didn't ask me to say that. That's all just me saying what comes to my mind.
I did not solicit that. Let me say there's another quote. There's two other quotes from his website that I really, really like. I'm going to share with you. He says, okay. Do you have the courage to ask for what you truly deserve in life? I love that. And it does take courage. You and if you do, you need to respect and love yourself for that. And he says, my own hero's journey confirms that our lives make perfect sense when we find the guts and guidance to step fully into who we are and what we came here to do. I love that.
Wow, that was a smart guy that said that, or a smart woman.
I should be a coach or something.
yeah, we get that guy on your podcast. Well, my last word will be that my signature line on my emails is a quote from Panache Desai, which says that life cannot give you anything that you're not willing to give yourself.
Very true.
Very true. I will leave that bit of wisdom.
And you can't share with others what you can't share with yourself.
No, you can't. All right, so Nikki, thank you so much for this time, and again for creating this platform for me and for all your listeners.
Do you want to tell the listeners how they can find out more about you? Since I've already shared all the good stuff off your site.
It's really so. My name is Dave Gold, just like it sounds, DAVEGOLD. So my website is davegold.com. And you can, if you want to reach me, it's Dave at davegold.com, or at the website you can contact me. But Dave Gold, and see if things, it's interesting. I can only work with the people I want to work with, and if any of this resonates with you, anything that Nikki said and I said, resonates, feel free to reach out and see what happens.
Well, that's something I always say too. It's you've got to talk to the person and see if you click, see if the match is right.
That's it. That's it. And I don't want anything that's not mine, including working with people's money who aren't meant to work with me. So, all right, Nikki, thank you very much, and thanks to all your listeners. And I look forward to the next time we talk.
Sounds good. And listeners,
okay.
I'll be with you next time on Ready for Love Radio.